We're good. All right. Okay, so thank you for having us at the Maricopa County Library Council's Tech Talk event. My name is Luis Cardenas Camacho. I am a partnership specialist with the US Census Bureau. And joining me today is my colleague, Charlene, who's also with the Census Bureau. Charlene, if you want to
Hello,
introduce.
I'm Charlene Vasquez, native here in Arizona and just came on board, so I'm learning from the best here.
And so I'm going to start my presentation like any good government employee with a little disclosure note and a little footnote where, yes, I'm a partnership specialist. What I am not a Census Bureau data dissemination specialist. I am not part of their geography department. There's a whole another section within the section bureau that does amazing work, and they focus specifically on the technology of the Census Bureau. However, this decennial census, we are going to have a lot of technology that's going to be influencing the census. And so I wanted to give you the perspective from the partnership specialist and from the partners library, right? Which is great for us in order to do our outreach plans. And so another quick thing, we're also presenting at the Arizona State Librarians meeting tomorrow. So in an effort to be efficient, the first part of this presentation is more intended for that presentation, and then I put the websites and everything at the end of our presentation. However, I'm still going to go through the first part because I want everyone to get the general information. I'm going to go a little bit quicker in that part. If you want to go back and you have any questions on that part, we can always go back at the end. And so with that, why we do the census. Anyone know why we do the census? I want to take a wild guess why we do the census.
Money.
Money.
Representation.
Anyone else? So that is the effect of why we do the census, and that's how we do it. But why we actually do the census is because it's mandated by the U.S. Constitution. Right there, Article 1, Section 2 assigns us the responsibility to conduct a decennial census every 10 years. So since 1790 onward, we have been doing this through world wars, through depressions, through expansions in government, Democrats, Republicans, the Whig Party, I think at some point was one of them. So regardless of who is in office and what our current situation, whether we're going through a recession or not, whether there's a massive depression or war, we will do the census. What I tell folks in the United States, there are 3 things that you can guarantee, and that is taxes, death, because that's a human thing, and every 10 years, regardless of what happens, the US Census will take place. So, three quick things that I want to keep us, that's going to be the theme of the first part of the presentation. It's the census is important, it is safe, and it's easy. And so the census is important for what you mentioned. Congressional representation among the states goes off of the census. And so depending on population, we will have either gained or lost congressional seats based on the accuracy of our census. That doesn't mean that we don't have the numbers to justify another congressional seat. It means whether we captured all those numbers and all that population. And so we might have the numbers for a 10th, but if we don't have an accurate census, we won't get that 10th seat. The other thing I like to tell folks is because that is such a big part of the census, when people talk about how we draw the congressional districts and legislative districts, in Arizona, the Independent Redistricting Committee is in charge of doing that. However, with the census information, that also goes towards drawing our school districts and our voting precincts, which is where a lot of our local community leaders, to include a lot of our librarians and county librarians, serve in leadership roles. The big one there is it distributes federal funds which help distribute libraries, and we'll go a little bit more in depth in that later on in the presentation. Census is safe. Because it is constitutionally mandated, that means you have constitutional protection. So Title 13 of the U.S. Code guarantees your safety in terms of the data that you have. So for example, as an employee, I take an oath the moment I took the job with penalty of 5 years or $250,000 fine if I ever break my oath in terms of passing out information. That is an oath that every census employee, from the director who's here in Phoenix today to the recruitment assistant that's going to be working off of the area census office, we all take the same oath. And so Title 13 designates the Census Bureau as the surveying agency for the federal government. So other than just the decennial census, we also do over 100 different surveys. Okay? And all of that data that we collect from either the decennial census or in all of those other surveys, when we go to share them, it is statistical format only. We do not share like personal identifiable information. After 72 years, Title 44 allows that information to become public. That is after 72 years, and that is mostly for, people use that mostly for ancestry purposes. So you'll see an upload in 20, in the next, 2022 for the last 70 years. Census is easy. In 2010 and in previous censuses, we've always had just a questionnaire, or we've had people go and enumerate in the past. And so now we have 3 options, and we have the option to do the census online, over the phone, and the questionnaire. And technically there's a 4th option, which we don't like to consider that an option, because if you don't do any of those 3, we are gonna go knock on your door, which is the 4th option, right? Which is in person, somebody knocking at your door. Oh, bless your heart. Thank you. I'm already feeling it. Thank you so much. Sorry for the folks that are going to be watching this later. I needed some water. And so what I like to tell folks when we talk about the census options that we're going to have this time around, it's the first time in history that we're actually going to have a census conducted online. Not just our history, but it's our first time in our history as a human species, that we're doing this online. So great opportunities, great challenges that go along with that in terms of technology, right? How we will do it will vary depending on, especially in Arizona, there are some rural areas where it's going to be done a little bit differently, and we will go over that here in a bit. But for most of Arizona and most of the country, about 95%, they'll get an invitation to respond. And this is where you start. You might have heard there's going to be a code, right? There's going to be a code in this invitation that you got to type in, and it'll do what it does, and you'll pull up. Well, those invitations start going out on March 12th. And we will send multiple invitations. So we'll send, the week of the 12th, we'll send the first one. The week of March 16th, we'll start sending a reminder letter. If we still don't have a response by then, the week of the 26th, we'll send another reminder postcard. Letting them know, hey, this is the Census Bureau. We need you to complete this form. It is legally required, and it's important to your community. Here's your code you can input into the system. Here's the number you can call to get it done over the phone. The 4th reminder will go out on April 8th if we still don't have folks that completed it. And that 4th reminder, along with that postcard and that invitation to respond, will include the actual paper questionnaire. So some folks are just not going to want to do it online or over the phone, and they're going to wait for that paper questionnaire. It'll come on the week of April 8th. Okay? The final postcard will go on April 20th, and that is the final reminder. After that, if we have no response, we'll do something called non-response follow-up, and that is when we go knocking on doors. You've heard this term, and I just wanted to put it up here because I want to let you know, these complete count committees. Most of our complete count committees across the state, and I venture to say like 90s, I can only think of maybe 1 or 2, one in Maricopa County, and maybe another one across the state doesn't have a library involved as a member. So all of our libraries are pretty much participating in complete count committees. And so what complete count committees are, they're established by local governments, whether that be the county, the city, a town. We have towns that have established those. And so they establish them to do the outreach efforts and raise awareness for increased participation on the census. The role of libraries within these committees and the role of libraries just all together. They are an essential, trusted partner for us. We will fail miserably if we don't have libraries on board. Repeat that again. We will fail miserably at this if we do not have all of our libraries on board. So libraries are gonna be part of delivering, are gonna help deliver information for us. You're a trusted source of information for a lot of community members. A lot of community members come here and just learn about what's happening around the community through your messaging boards, through your newsletters, through your whiteboards on walls, flyers. And so you are a key partner in disseminating information for us. You also provide internet access for folks. You have computer labs. You have a large amount of computers. Even the smallest library that I've been to has 2 computers, right? And so that's, in some places in rural Arizona, that means a lot. 2 computers is a lot. And so you have internet access. You are a trusted messenger to the hard-to-count communities. I was looking at some of the numbers. There is and we'll go over hard-to-count communities as well here in a bit. There's a library within 5 to 10 miles of 99% of all of the hard-to-count communities, census tracts. So when we look at census tracts in a little bit, you'll see which ones are the hard to count for us. We have that already identified. Within that census tract, there is a library 99% of the times within 5 miles. And so very important that you are partnering with us. And of course, you train data users. That includes businesses, community leaders, students, whether they be in elementary school all the way up to higher education. What's it worth to Arizona libraries? Well, in total, it's $675 billion that gets distributed every year. $675 billion from federal government goes to states to fund different programs. There's this erroneous nomenclature of something called census funds. There's no such thing as census funds. Okay, some people refer to them as census funds, but I want to clarify, there's no such thing as census funds. We, as the Census Bureau, do not fund any one entity in particular, right? We are used after our information with the decennial census and our other community surveys are used to inform funding formulas that fund these programs. So for example, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, that's how they get their apportionment of funds, of federal funds. They are the ones that fund Library Services and Technologies Act. Through that act, that is how libraries get funded. So the federal, the IMLS will send money to the state to distribute to libraries, and it's based on your census population data. It's not the only thing that it's based on, but it is a big part of what your funds are based on. The innovative approaches to literacy grant from the Department of Education is another grant that a lot of libraries use. The E-rate funds, which I actually found out about that in Prescott Valley, in their library, who actually gets FCC funds through the Universal Service Funds. So that is how you get your internet rates reduced, right? Or even some thinking it's free in some cases or extremely reduced in other cases. That's how you get internet to your libraries, through that fund. And of course, it funds several assistance programs that are used by your patrons, whether it be Title I, SNAP, Medicare, etc., right? Now we get to the good part. Now this is our part. This is the tech talk. It only took me 20 minutes to get through. Does anybody have any questions about the first part before I move on to the second?
Just really quick to verify, because I've heard from other people that you don't actually need the code that you're provided to fill out the online portion of the census. Is that true or not true?
That is true. Absolutely 110% correct.
Okay.
You do not need that code. You can still go. What it does, and we'll go over it right now when we go. Actually, that's probably the next slide. Okay. We'll go over right now in terms of address canvassing and why those codes are assigned to housing units. But you do not need it. If you lose your invitation, if you go in there and you're at a library event, you can still just jump in there and type in your address. What it does is just it does the whole pre-fill of an address, because it's already tied to that address, and so it lets us know this is from that address, from the back end, right? You can easily just go in there and type in your address and you're good. Let's get to our part, which is the technology part. Yes, your question. Oh, I thought you looked at me like, hey, sorry. There's a question in you, I know. So we're going to go through, and I'm going to X out of the presentation here shortly, and we're going to go through our Response Outreach Area Mapper, ROAM. So the federal government in general, and government just in general, they love acronyms. I am a Marine Corps veteran. We had an acronym for everything. literally everything. We had an acronym for it, okay? The other thing that the Census Bureau as an agency loves is maps. Maps, charts, and data. We are all about that. If you need any sort of map, we have it, electronically or on paper, right? That is the Census Bureau's thing. So when we look at that map, I just want to mention real brief, we're going to be looking at the low response score. So the low response scores that you see there, it says 31%. That is what we're expecting, the folks that we're expecting not to respond. That is not how many people responded, that is how many people we're expecting not to respond. Let me give you a quick example of what that looks like in terms of federal funds. Tulsa Elementary, I was with them a few weeks ago with their superintendent, and she was talking about her Title I funds. And so a few months ago, she looked at the funds that she got last year for Title I's and realized that she was getting about $1 million less than the Boss Elementary School District. Well, Tulsa Elementary serves about 500 more students than the Balls Elementary School District. So that immediately triggered an issue because they serve similar population, right? And so she said, well, what's going on with this? How come I'm getting $1 million less than they are? And so she called Balls Elementary and said, who's your grant writer, right? Why are you guys, what are you guys doing that you're getting more funds? And said, nothing, we're submitting the same grant that you are, we're getting the same federal funds that you are. And so what she did is she called the Department of Education and asked why was she getting $1 million less a year in Title I funds. And they looked up her low response score in her area, and in the particular census tract that is served by Tulsa Elementary School District, they had about a 30% undercount there, low response score. So that equated to just one program. We're not talking about transportations, libraries, E-rates, just one program that serves youth that are served by libraries, equated to $1 million. That's not even the free and reduced lunch. That's a whole separate program, right? This is just Title I's. Over 10 years. So that's $10 million they missed out on. Okay, and so these numbers and the low response scores, they have a very real impact. Because again, we're not even talking about the E-rates, how MLS, or how we fund libraries. We're not even talking about free and reduced lunch. Head Start, we're not talking about this one program over $1 million that easily, that quickly. So that 30% is huge. And so I'm going to open up briefly the road mapper so that you can take a look at it, because all of this is public and all of this you will have access to right here. Hopefully it works, because sometimes it backs up. Okay, so here's our map, right? Oh no. I'm in the ocean. That's not good. We do not count fishes. Okay, let me, anybody want to pull up any particular municipality or city? Phoenix is fine? Let's go Phoenix. Let's type Phoenix. Usually it pops up. I'm assuming it's a little bit slow now. It'll pre-populate usually. Well, there'll be a little drop-down menu there that'll show you Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's zoom into this census tract. Okay. So when we are here, when you're here, your family, right? Sorry. When you're here, we get to add layers to this map. So if you look at this technology here, you get to add some layers. And I always like to start off here because this is kind of like not telling me much, right? And so this legend here will show you the type of layers that you have added to it. And so I always like to go in here and add some layers so I can get some additional information that I want. So for example, if I want to know where our area census offices are going to be covering, I would add that there, right? And you'll see this change, it'll create boundaries and it'll add lines. If I wanted to look at where our school districts are at in the drawing of our school districts, it'll be there. And when we zoom out, you'll be able to see the lines that get drawn. Same thing for legislative districts and the such. I always like to add the minor civil divisions and the other scores that are here. Okay. Place layer. So what this does, let me take this there, because it's going to layer too much. What this does when you go in on a particular census tract, it'll begin to give you the information on that census tract. And so this census tract, for example, is census tract 1141. On census tract 1141, we're expecting a low response score of 30.5. It's low.
And how is that determined, that low response score?
Right. So that is a great question. Great question. So what we're looking at is we're looking at historical data, right? So the last 20 years, or the last two censuses. What has that response score been in that area? We've also had a test in 2015 and a test this year that we tested response scores. So in Arizona, the Census Bureau has been running tests since 2015. We've been one of the test sites. And so that's helped inform low response scores. The other things that help in that calculation or that estimate is the over 100 other surveys that we usually do in the census tract. So the Census Bureau has the Cardenas Census, but also has the American Community Survey, there's transportation surveys, there are crime and statistics surveys. And so some of the stuff, we're constantly sending surveys out to folks, and we just kind of average it out. And so we have a projected formula that averages it out. Some of the information that you can, yes, I'm sorry, I thought I heard. Some of the other information that you can look at is the age, demographic, medium household income, Hispanic, non-Hispanic, all that stuff. So there's all kinds of information that you can look at here. And so let me see if I can add one more layer that will help here. Audience segmentation layer. So this is a new layer that they added recently, which I love because I'm a little bit of a wonk. So it tells you what the category of that census block is, right? So for example, here we have a large concentration of student and military community. This is where ASU is at. Our universities are our university students are one of our hard to count populations, unfortunately. Why? Because they assume that mom and dad are going to count them at home. They might have a living arrangement that is non-traditional, as in they have a lease where they told the landlord that there's going to be 2 of them living there and there's 10. Right? And they don't want to tell a landlord because they think we're going to tell a landlord there's 10. But can we tell a landlord there's 10? No. No, we cannot tell a landlord there's 10 people on this one address. That information is constitutionally protected. What the landlord might see if he pulls this up is he'll see what you just saw. Well, there's about 30% here, and this average age. That's how we distribute information. We don't send them a master list of this is how many people are living in this address, this is that demographic. No, that's not how that gets shared. It gets shared in just how you saw it here. We'll go into some other data sites where you'll see how that gets shared. Okay. And so, for example, here, this is the downtown area. Oh no, it's the top one froze. Okay. Hang there for a minute. I want it to freeze. You can go and see what the categories are in terms of, for example, this is downtown dynamics. So geography has put this together, and this is kind of what it is and where they are and the why it's labeled that way, right? And so a lot of times it's businesses, it's shops that are there, and so their response rate is higher because there's very little homes there, and businesses are not like businesses don't get enumerated like a household, right? So that is Rome. Our complete count committees are using this to inform their outreach. So for example, the Phoenix Complete Count Committee, right? They're looking at So they're looking at those colors, right? So the darker the blue, the worse the more effort they have to put into that community. I don't want to say the worst communities, but the more effort they have to put into that community. So when they go out to expand outreach funds or send their trucks out, they have trucks out today that they're launching that are going to have computers on, and they're going to be wrapped with census messaging. And so they want to target those those communities that have low response scores, because they want to increase the response rate. Because the communities typically that have the lower response scores are the communities that use the most resources and are in need of the most resources. And so that is how the complete count committees are using Rome to inform their decisions. And I don't think Rome is working anymore, so let's hope that the other stuff is working. Any questions on Rome? No. Awesome. So how are we determining this? I'm only gonna, okay. So we are in the community now, even though we are not doing the actual decennial census till 2020, we are in the community right now, doing our first decennial operation. So from August 18th to October 18th, we are doing something called address canvassing. It's AdCan because, again, we like abbreviations and acronyms and such. So our first AdCan campaign is, what we are doing is we're going out and verifying addresses. And so I want to show you a quick video. It's the video that I showed you earlier. It's about 4 minutes. Bear with me. It should play because we played before, and if you're not, then you can hear me talk somewhere. But I want to give our director, Dillinger, the opportunity to speak.
Dillingham, Director of the US Census Bureau. As we kick off our first major field operation for the 2020 census, address canvassing or listing, the Census Bureau is dedicated to ensuring that we are on track and ready to accomplish the mission of the 2020 census, to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. The robust design for the 2020 census uses 21st century technologies. We have made many improvements and innovations over the past decade, including better technologies for canvassing neighborhoods and developing complete and updated address listings and maps, more language assistance than ever before. We have expanded customer assistance phone centers with instant assistance in English and 12 non-English languages, and multilingual resources that reach 99.6% of our population. Hiring over 1,500 partnership specialists, more than ever before, to recruit more than 300,000 partners to help us reach hard-to-count populations. Better technologies and more efficient processes for census takers. A communications campaign that includes new ways to reach people and communities, including the hard-to-count populations, and advanced information technologies, security safeguards, and privacy protections to strengthen confidentiality protections. The census is important, easy, and safe. It is important because the count is used to apportion seats in the House of Representatives, to allocate hundreds of billions in federal, state, and local government funds for important programs and services, and to guide critical decisions by communities, governments at all levels, businesses, and others. It is easy because for the first time, you can self-respond online, by phone, or on paper for the mail. It is safe because we're using the best technologies and practices to protect data confidentiality and reduce cybersecurity risks. I want to remind everyone that the Census Bureau is legally required to keep all responses strictly confidential. We do not share confidential, personally identifiable information with any other agency, including law enforcement or anyone else. Finally, we are currently improving and expanding administrative records for enhancing our data and statistics. Now here is Deirdre Bishop, Chief of our Geography Division, with more on our address canvassing operations.
Thanks, Steve. When dealing with a diverse nation of over 330 million people living in more than 140 million housing units, the challenges of conducting a census can be quite complex. Our goal is to conduct a complete and accurate census. But before we can do that, we need to establish where to count. We need to make sure we have all the correct addresses to reach everyone. How do we do that? First, by working with the United States Postal Service. This decade, we added more than 5.3 million new addresses using data from the USPS. Next, we validated over 106 million addresses using information from tribal, state, and local governments. Finally, we conduct the address canvassing operation. In the past, the Census Bureau would wait until the end of the decade to do most of this work. In preparation for the 2010 census, we hired approximately 150,000 people to walk around every block in the nation, validating our address list and maps. Now, with the advancement of technology and innovation over the past 10 years, we have been able to accomplish most of this work in the office. We're able to validate 65% of the addresses using satellite imagery, a massive accomplishment for us. This means that in preparation for the 2020 census, we will only have to hire about 40,000 people to validate the remaining 35% of the addresses in the field, about 50 million addresses nationwide. Thanks to advances in technology and the extent of our partnerships with tribal, federal, state, and local government partners, we have our most complete address list and maps ever. This will lead to an accurate count of the population and housing for the 2020 census. Now, for more on the in-field portion of our address canvassing operation.
No, we're not going to talk about the infill portion. So, as mentioned before, about 65% of our addresses were verified through satellite imaging. So, there's this because it was an issue with some folks that didn't understand what satellite imaging is. We don't have census drones. We're not spying on people. We're not using little drones to go look at folks, okay? We don't have that. Let's be upfront about that. We're using satellite imaging, right? And it's accurate. It's very accurate in some areas of the country. In other areas, not so much, right? And this is one of those where, like, topography plays a role. Right, there are some areas where they're heavily forward, like let's take Flagstaff, right? There are some areas that are clear. You can see with satellite imaging, there's 10 houses there. We have a list here that was submitted by the Postal Service that says there's 10 houses there. We verified with the city. The city says there's 10 houses there. Check, check, check. There's 10 houses there. We don't need to go knock on doors, right? However, there are some areas where we look at satellite imaging and we can see that there's structure there, but maybe it's covered by trees. And so we don't know how many are there just based on satellite imagery, right? Look, we see it looks like there might be one, maybe two, might be a little complex, we don't know. We get the information from the USPS. They say that there's 4 houses that they deliver mail there to. We get from the local municipality, which would be Flagstaff, and they say, yeah, there's actually 5 addresses that we have there. It's like, oh, okay, there's a discrepancy here. First of all, we can't verify which one of you is right based on satellite imagery, right? Because we can't see it. Second of all, you two are giving me 2 different numbers. And so that census tract becomes one of the census tracts in which we're going to be doing address canvassing. We're going to just send someone there to check. Pretty much it. And all their job is, our listers, what they are doing right now, is they are driving to that place, knocking on the door, verifying addresses. They are asking 2-3 simple questions. They're asking, is this the right address? 123 Main Street. Yes or no? Simple as that. Yes, this is 123 Main Street. No, this was 123 Main Street, but now it is 123 MLK Boulevard, or 123 Cesar Chavez Way, or 123, whatever, because it changed in commemoration of our mayor or president or whatever, right? So we verify and we update it. Now the street name has changed. We are asking if there is a structure in the back with folks are living. A lot of houses have a little in-law suite, a casita in the back. They have RVs where folks live, trailers where folks live. We want to make sure that we capture that, and we'll go over why we want to capture that in a bit. We're also asking another thing is whether this is a group quarters, right? Whether this is it might be a domestic violence home shelter, right? Whether it's not necessarily registered as a domestic violence, it might be a church property that they use for teens or runaway youth. And so those centers are enumerated differently. They're counted differently. That's what I mean by enumeration. They're counted differently. So if we know from the get-go that this is an address here and this is the right address, yes, there's people here, no, we don't have anything in the back, but this is a domestic violence shelter, then we'll treat that differently than if we were just going on and knocking on doors, and we enumerate it differently. So what does that look like? And again, the Census Bureau loves maps, and so it's all here. You actually get to see where we are doing address canvassing. Pull up the map, and it's not being done everywhere because we don't need it done everywhere. Again, over 65% of the U.S. already got verified. City of Phoenix has seen some growth, but not in terms of residential housing. It's seen high rises and such, right? Whereas in my community, Goodyear, we've seen a lot of residential growth. So there's a lot more address canvassing happening. The maps, it's either my internet connection or the maps are down. So what it is, as you can see, and I'll show you here in my presentation. I don't think, unfortunately, I'm going to be able to do that, but that's why I pulled pictures. We are always ready. So I'm looking here, I was looking at a congressional district. I was briefing Congressman Grijalva's office on this, and so I wanted to let him know, okay, so about 27% of the housing units in your district are gonna get a knock on the door sometime between August 18 and October 18. And this is what we're doing, and this is what we're asking them. Yes, if they call you, tell them it is us. There's an address where they can go to, which is on the link, that they can go online and they can pull up. You can go online and pull up my name, Charlene's name, and then we'll pull up a census employees, and they'll tell us there's a phone number where you can call the regional office, which is in Denver. You can call the regional office and say, hey, I have this dude here, says he's with the Census Bureau. Is he a legitimate? He's showing me an ID, but I just want to make sure, right? And they'll just run my name and they'll say, yes, that's him, please answer whatever he's asking of you, right? We will be identifying ourselves. My ID at the moment is in my computer because that's one of the layers of technology that we have. We have encrypted computers and encrypted systems, which is why these things are so slow. It is multiple levels of encryption. You saw when I was trying to log in, and for those people that are watching this online, we started about 10-15 minutes. It took me about that long to log in because there's multiple levels of encryption that I have to go through. Okay, and so passwords upon passwords upon passwords. And it's slow for a good reason. It's slow because they're constantly updating the security measures. But back to address canvassing. So that is what we're doing now. That is how technology is playing a role. That is how technology has been playing a role with the Census Bureau this whole time. Okay, we are very technology forward agency because it has been a requirement of our job in order for us to conduct our job. And the first census was done, and they had paper and just wrote name and talked about what's your name, how many people are here, that sort of thing, are you a slave or not, that sort of thing. In 1880, when we did the census in 1880, we did not deliver the results of the decennial census till 1888. It took us 8 years because we had grown that much, and they were still doing it on paper. So for the 1890 decennial census, we actually went out and created the first tabulation machine. It was a Census Bureau employee that created the very first computer tabulation machine because we needed to do it more efficiently. Right? So technology has been a part of the Census Bureau since its very beginnings because we have to. When we do see that there is new construction, so for example, I really do have a neighborhood that's building in front of me. They're not going to be done by the time the address canvassing gets done. I can see that some houses are already done, but people are not going to be moving in there. There's still construction happening around there. So they're likely not going to be done until like January, maybe December. We want those addresses because people will start moving in around that time. And so we have this program called a new construction program where municipalities, any of these reported registered agents, whether it's the tribal, municipal, county, or state, will send into that email address or that phone number the list of addresses. Say, hey, there's a new community that popped up. Do you guys have them? We'll check. If we don't, we'll send someone there. Or if they have the master list because they're registered with us, they can send us the master list and we'll include them in our list. Again, another one, and hopefully this one works because it would suck if I'm doing a technology brief and my technology doesn't work. Type of enumeration. So I wanted to show you this real quick. I always like to Google this one because this one I think is fun. This is census tea. Kind of drink the Kool-Aid, you drink the tea. And so we have something called type of enumeration. So not everyone is going to get counted the same, as I mentioned, right? So we have group quarters, which some of the students and folks like foster children living in foster care, they're counted different. Our homeless shelters are counted differently, and they get counted earlier, right? Our students that live on campus, our military personnel that lives on base, they're counted differently. They're counted through a process called group quarters. Right? And so what we do is we know that they rotate, we work with that administration, they give us the records, we don't have to go in there necessarily. We can, it's preferred that we go in there so we can have an accurate count. But if they want to give us their administrative records and say, you know what, we have 10 people here, here's the information that you need, then that's all we need. Right? The universities will send us a master file of the students living on campus, and then we don't have to try to figure out, go have us running around on campus trying to count students, right? Why? If we have the university would just give us their dorm list and it's a master list and we count them that way. Okay, so that's that type of enumeration. There's another type of enumeration, which is again is what we prefer, which is what 95% of the country will have, which is self-response. It means your efforts coming to fruition, right? That census event that you'll host at your library where folks come in and do the census online, that's self-response. That's how most of the country is going to do it. For some areas in Maricopa County and some areas in Arizona in general, we will have something called update leave. And so as you can see, it's not a big portion in Maricopa County, but it's a huge portion in other places in Arizona. And so what update leave is, and I can zoom in, I don't know why I'm zooming in this way, but I'm already committed to it, so I'm not going to change. I'm already committed to this non-efficient process. Okay, so let me add some layers here. We're looking for some places so that I know what I'm looking at. There they are. Right, and so Buckeye, for example, I wanted to pull out, so small, it's not even in the map. Tonopah and the such. Here we go, Tonopah, right? Buckeye, let's look at Tonopah and Buckeye. So a portion of Buckeye will have, and you can see these, it's 100%, it'll tell you, 100% of it will be self-response. That means we're going to send those mailers out to them. That's what that means. We're going to send them out and we're counting them to respond. If they don't respond, then we're going to do non-response follow-up, right? But for some areas, like for example here, Tonopah, about 11% of that population is going to get counted through update leave. What that means is we're actually going to go to the house. We're not even going to send them an invitation. We're not going to send them a postcard. We're not going to send them a letter. We're just going to go to the house and drop it off. Why do we do that? Because some of these areas are remote, and they don't get addresses. They don't have a mailbox. They have a PO box somewhere in town, or they go use another PO box that's not necessarily associated to any one address, right? So the Census Bureau will not mail out to post boxes. We will mail out to boxing units, like the box units at the end of your street. Yeah, that's not a post box. But we won't mail out to post boxes, right? Because they are not associated with an address necessarily. You can move addresses and keep the same post box number. Right? If you were in Phoenix and you have your post box here, you live next to the dorm and you have your post box here at the US Postal Service or wherever, and then you move somewhere else, but you wanted to keep the post box, or you went through UPS and you kept you have a post box there because you want to have your mail delivered there because that's where your mom lives or something, and you were leaving out of town. We can't count on post boxes. It's not an accurate count. And so for those addresses that have post office boxes, we're just gonna go knock on the door, leave them, or go and leave them the questionnaire. It's called update leave. Again, why is it called updating? Because we're updating addresses. If while we're there, we notice that, oh, this address is actually not this address. I saw there's a name change, we're gonna update it. We're gonna leave. What are we leaving? We're leaving the question. That's a simple update leave, okay? And so that's happening in a lot of parts of the country. It's happening in portions of Arizona, and it's happening in portions of Maricopa County, for example. I'll get another one, Surprise, right? And Sun City in that area. They have a lot of areas that have post office boxes that we're just gonna go and leave them on there. Another reason why we do that is low connectivity. So when you look at Rome, which unfortunately the map isn't working anymore, there's a connectivity score. We know based on the FCC data and based on like the different communication service providers, what the connectivity rate is for certain areas. And so if there's very low connectivity here, right, then why are we gonna send you to do it online if you can't get online? Doesn't make sense, right? And so now we have the technology to make those informed decisions and be more efficient. And yes, ma'am.
When does the door-to-door canvassing for PO box areas start? Is that after April 20th as well?
You have that date? I have that date. I'll pull it up.
Well, if you had for final reminder postcard before we follow up in person as April 20th through the 27th.
So let me pull it up for you because I want to show you the key dates. So I want to show off our new key dates. We have a new key dates
I'm sorry,
flyer.
what was the question?
When does canvassing for the PO box only areas start? Is it?
Oh, gotcha.
Non-responders?
Okay.
So so this is going to be a little bit different because we have group quarters here, right? So group quarter starts in February and runs through June. Some of those folks are those. Mid-March is when we will start the actual update leave operations. Would be mid-March. Okay, which is March. It's not March 13th. It's March 12th. Okay, but it's a little bit different because we're starting in February, and I don't have the exact date for that for group quarters, which some of them may fall into group quarters, and so February, March are the dates on that. Okay, that is that for that one. So where does this end up? We have all this information. Where does it end up? Well, it ends up in our database, and you have access to it, right? So once it goes out, it used to go to the American Fact Finder. So you were able to pull up the American Fact Finder and look at the reports. It is not there anymore. We are transitioning. It's there still, but we are transitioning to a new data, which is datacensus.gov, and you can pull it up there. So you can look, for example, and I think I used Yuma County as an example on my thing, so I'll stick with that. You can pull Yuma County, and you can look at some of the tabulations that have happened there. You can have male, female, under 5, like demographics. All that information will end up here. You will have nice little charts that'll be used to have that, and so you can kind of click and look at the specific data tables that are part of that tabulation, and you get to create your own legend. It is very, very comprehensive. Very comprehensive. You can create profiles, and you can tell it what it is that you want it to look at. Right, so this is the general one, like employment rate, poverty rate, population, median household, all and such. But you can tell it, for example, what the health issues are here, what the health insurance rates are for that county, employment rates. You can see employment rates, and then you can begin to look at the tables. Once the census is complete, you'll be able to look at some more in statistical, right? This is not telling you whether Jim Bob or Billy Joe is employed or not. This is just giving you a statistical format. So this is what we mean when we tell the source. And I keep saying that, and I know you guys know that, but that is one of the things that we keep bumping into. Why are you asking this information? Who are you going to give it to? Back to you in statistical format. And this is what we mean in statistical format. I don't have access to it. Nobody has access. Our director, who has been with the Census Bureau, I don't think she would like to, for several decades, does not have access to that. She oversees 12 states, and she can't get that information. Right? It's protected. And so it will end up there. You will have access to it. You will also have access to the Census Quick Facts, which is actually really, really cool. Because if you're doing any sort of research and you just want to pull up and compare, so for example, if you want to compare Arizona to the US, right? The baseline is US data information, and so then you can compare Arizona to the US. So in terms of population, in terms of age, persons 65 and over, it's 17%, nationally is 16%, so we are higher than the national average in terms of people that live in the US. Veterans, living arrangements, I mean, it goes on and on. Education levels, it just goes on and on and on. And it's all there readily and publicly available for you. It is a great, great resource for folks. And it is what decision makers use in terms of deciding where resources are needed, right? So where are we gonna put that next library? And how do we justify it, putting it here? Well, we see it. We as community members see the need there. But that bureaucrat in DC doesn't know the community. He doesn't know what's on Central Lab, or they don't know. So when they put in for that grant money, when they put in for that permit, when they put in for those funds, they need to show the demographic data and the need within that community. And it is not enough to just tell them, well, Billy Bob here doesn't have a library in 10 miles. No, you need to say, as part, we can share that as part of the data story, but you need to have a comprehensive report and say, and demographics and show the need. You use census data for that. The more accurate our census data, the more accurate it is and it becomes, the more easily it'll be for us to identify where needs are in our community, and we can direct resources there. Yes, ma'am.
Forgive me if you covered this, but I'm just curious about homeless that are not in homeless shelters. How is that addressed?
Yes, so they are going to get counted through group quarters, and there will be a point-in-time count as well. They might not be living in a shelter. They might be living couch surfing. Those folks will be where they are at census day. If they're truly couch surfing, like they might be with a family member and a friend. If they're on the street, we are working with community organizations, faith-based organizations, our churches. We are working with law enforcement agencies, and we will have our own point-in-time count sometime in February. I cannot tell you the date, because the moment we give out that date, those camps disperse. Right? And I've done point-in-time counts before for our veteran population, and the moment you say, we're gonna be here, make sure you're there to get counted, ain't nobody gonna be there. Yes, ma'am.
Similarly, those military who don't have their own quarters assigned to them that are living in barracks, and that's the rear,
Yes.
and they're assigned forward, like Afghanistan.
Yes.
They're counted for the rear, right?
Yes, they are counted in the rear, yes. Yes, for those that are on forward operating base or deployed elsewhere, they're counted in the rear. For those that are living in the community, for example, our folks are in Luke Air Force, there's a lot of them that live out by me in Goodyear, and so they get counted in Goodyear. They work and they're stationed at Luke Air Force, but they're not in the military base of Luke Air Force, so those numbers don't go to Glendale, they go to Goodyear, which is a good thing, because we have a lot of bases here, and a lot of our service members are in different communities, and they're utilizing different community resources, right? And so again, if we would account everyone where they're technically stationed or based out of, then all that number, all those veterans that are, or those service members that are living, for example, in Goodyear, would then be counted in Glendale, and that will short Goodyear out of the resources that this population is served. And there's bases all over Arizona that's the same thing, and that is why we do that. Another, and I know I'm running short of time. What time do I?
No, you're still good.
You're good.
Oh, am I? I was rushing. All right, never mind. This is a good one. I like it. Oh, I got time. Awesome. Statistics in Schools, another one of our websites where we are using. Do I have enough time to show it? How much time do I have?
Sure. All right, let me see, exact clock on there was wrong.
Yeah,
Because I think we said it's
it's only 11. So
yeah, it's only 11, you said it's 11:30 if I remember correctly.
All right. Hey, one more time. Let's show a video. I like this video and it's good, and it explains statistics in school. And let me just say, all jokes aside, statistics in school is one of the key programs that we have to count students, which is unfortunately a largely undercounted population. Whether we are talking about our Head Start students or whether we're talking about our graduate, even our PhD students, they are hard to count. And this video explains how we're going and working with some of them.
Statistics are everywhere. On baseball fields, on road trips. And these numbers are more important today than ever. By the time today's elementary school students leave home for college, the number of statistics-related jobs will have increased by more than 30%. That is why the Census Bureau is doing our part to prepare them for an increasingly data-driven world. For decades, our team at the Census Bureau has worked with the education community to inform students about the decennial census count every 10 years. Recently, though, we expanded our efforts through the Statistics in Schools program. Education is changing so quickly, so we set out to find better ways to promote the value and everyday use of statistics through free activities, tools, and resources for K-12 teachers, not just every 10 years, but every school year. We recruited more than 100 teachers from schools across the nation to help us write and try out our new activities, and we gathered feedback and recommendations from hundreds more. We also got advice from experts at major statistics, education, and subject-specific organizations. The result? A program created for teachers by teachers that finds new ways to bring statistics to life for today's students. When students think of statistics, they often think of just math, but the new Statistics in Schools program opens up a world of possibilities for them, showing how stats matter in subjects like geography, history, English, and sociology. The program is receiving attention nationwide, and the number of people using it continues to grow. Whether the Census Bureau is preparing for a decennial count, an economic census, or any of its 100-plus surveys, the Statistics in Schools program will be there to offer even more relevant educational resources to make sure that future generations understand the importance of being counted and the importance of real-life data in the classroom and beyond. Visit the website at census.gov/schools to learn more about bringing the Statistics in Schools program to your school.
Or libraries. Schools or libraries, right? Because we serve the same population, right? And so, yes, it is called Statistics in Schools because, again, SIS and the government has this obsession of theirs with acronyms and, right? Statistics in Schools and libraries doesn't roll off the tongue easily. Statistics in Schools. But libraries as well, right? And so this is a great resource that we have in the Census Bureau. When they say that it goes beyond math, it really does. And so you can look at, for example, and I'll look at 9 through 12. Unfortunately, and maybe not so much, but some of the stuff that's dedicated for 9 through 12, I've had some of my colleagues who are in universities find it a bit challenging. So even though it says 9 through 12, there are some adults who could benefit from some of these activities. And so, I mean, it goes into like workforce, women in the workforce. It goes into historical mapping. Well, actually, I like this one here. Correlation between education and income. This is always good. I know that the Burton Bar has a college center here, right? And College Depot. This would be great to have there, and maybe just figure out what's the correlation. When you're here and you're pulling your hair out, and I've been there and trying to, why am I really doing this? Do I really need to finish this? Like, do I really need to finish this degree? Do I really need to go to college? Do I really need to do that? Once you start looking at some of the data in terms of the correlation between your education level and your then it becomes very apparent, oh yeah, I do. I want to do this. I do need to finish this. I do need to pay attention to this class. And so this is what the student will get. There's activities. There's the teacher's version as well, and so it's really fun. Some of it is fun, some of it is challenging, some of it is fun and challenging. And so statistics in schools, I cannot talk about it enough because it's a key program, and it's a key website that can also be used by our libraries. It should also be used by our libraries, especially libraries like Burton Bar that do have like the college people within its services. We are working with every school district, and so we are sending them statistics in schools kits that the principals and superintendents will receive sometime in September, maybe early October, depending on, it gets built out by tiers. And so they'll have some good material there that they can share and use with their schools. I can tell you that schools are already using this, and some libraries are also already using this, because you can print out activity sheets. So in the kids area where you have the playing and the tables where they can just go sit, you can just lay out activity sheets, and they're like fun 5-minute, 8-minute activity sheets. Some of them are focused like around holidays, right? So for example, Valentine's Day might have something to do with like relations and statistics in the US, right? Same-sex marriage. During Pride Month, there's a lot of information there as well. There's 4th of July, there's historical little sheets that you can lay out. Constitution Day is coming up. It's going to be a big one where we are going to have a lot of the stuff that's in statistics in school for Constitution Day will be like civic and engagement sort of activities that they can do while mom and dad are maybe grabbing a book or jumping on the internet to pay a bill or something. Is something that they can be doing here. And we highly, highly encourage our libraries to use statistics in schools, even though it doesn't say libraries. It is intended for you as well. We have a new partnership portal that I want to share with you because I have time, and I didn't think I had time. That has a lot of this information already. We have invested a significant amount of money in terms of our material, and so you don't need to spend extra money because we know that your funds are short as they are, and so there's no need for you guys to try to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, right? And so, for example, the brochures in terms of the residency criteria, it's there, it's readily available. It's actually the very first one that's on the page. And it's very important because when you look at the brochure that you can print out, here we talk about renters, right? A lot of our college students, how they're going to be enumerated, which is a question that we had here. We had questions of residency and facility use in terms of our military or college stores. We talked about that here. Here's a flyer, a 3-fold flyer that you can pull out and just put in your library for information. Yeah. There is also so there's like social media stuff that you can already have done. There's flyers that are to particular communities, for example, our Native American or Indigenous people, awareness poster regarding confidentialities, posters regarding our LGBTQIA community. It's in Spanish, there's Census 101 stuff there. And so it is all here for you, so you don't have to spend money trying to figure that out. We have also sample social media messages that can be shared within the library. And so, for example, we're excited to announce we partnered with the Census Bureau to support the 2020 census. To learn more, here's the website, right? So you don't have to spend time and effort trying to figure out what the messaging strategy should be. It's already there for you. Just copy, paste it, throw it on social media. Pick one of the various graphics that we have, and then just share it. And so all of that is available to you all. Technology in terms of security is going to be a big one, a very big issue, not a big issue, but a big question for a lot of folks. So if you can share that sort of messaging, that it is safe, that it is secure. In terms of going back to the technology part of the Census Bureau, as you heard the director say, we have the multiple levels of encryption. As you witness here, even with me trying to log into my computer, we have multiple levels of encryption. Our data our data centers are distributed, and some of them are online, some of them are offline. And so there are various ways in which we secure our data. Finally, census jobs. I think that's what I said. Yeah, census jobs. The last couple websites that I want to talk to you about in terms of technology, our jobs. We are hiring. There's jobs. We go from being one of the smallest federal agencies, one of the smallest agencies in the federal government, to being the second largest employer in the United States within a period of months. And I mean within a period of months. So this is where technology comes back and plays a huge role, right? So we're gonna have 5 area census offices in Arizona. There's gonna be one in Window Rock, one in Flagstaff, 3 here in Maricopa County. So one's gonna be in Glendale, one is in Mesa, one is in Phoenix. We have one in Tucson as well. And so those area census offices will be kind of like our HR and our operations headquarters here within the state. One of the issues that was brought up when we were doing the 2020 census is folks asked why we don't have more offices. Back in 2010, we had way more offices. What we told them was back in 2010, we had people filling out paper forms. We needed those offices. We needed the paper space. Right now, I can clock in my travel, I can clock in my pay, I can do my payroll, I can do all of it on my census issued phone. There's no need for an actual physical place for me to take a timesheet when I can just log into the website and literally do it on my phone, securely and safely. That's funny. Because I'll tell you what that is, and then you're not gonna know. I'll tell you what that is. That's the reminder that I have to submit my payroll thing. I was literally just talking about that. We submit them on Thursday so they can get validated on Friday, and then we get paid faster. But that was the reminder. Hey, make sure you validate your stuff. So I have to do that at some point today. But it can be done here. This is it. This was it, right? There's no phone call coming to the office and fill out your timesheet. There's none of that. No. We do it online. We use technology to make it more efficient. And it's very important that we continue to do so, because at the end of the day, it saves a lot of funds. And we're able to save literally billions of dollars by doing that. And that's funds that can get reinvested back into communities, and we can use those funds to have better technology within the Census Bureau. And so 2020 Census Jobs is the website that we have where you can go and apply for jobs that are the operation jobs, which are our listers and our enumerators. Our enumerators, you keep hearing me say that, are the people that are going to be out there counting folks. People that are going to be walking and counting and canvassing door to door and getting the counts for the people that don't respond, and the ones that are doing non-response follow-up. That's where they're going to go and get those jobs. Okay, so it's a quick application. All we ask for them is that they be 18 or older, that they be a U.S. citizen, and that they have access to a computer. Which, if you are, we don't need you to own a computer. We don't need you to have the nicest, best Mac. If you have access to a computer, which means if you have access to your library, you have access to a computer, right? And so that is one of the barriers that we're finding in some of these hard to count communities, is like, well, I don't have a computer. Well, do you have a library down the road? Yes, Burton Bars. I can take the library and go to Burton Bar, and then you have access to a computer, and you can get this job, right? And so that is one of the things that we're asking for, that they have access to a computer. They do not have to be the most technologically savvy people in the world. They don't need to be IT experts. They just need to have an email address, know how to go into an email address, and that's pretty much it. I think that's the most complex thing that we have is our Boxer app, which is an email and calendar app. Everything else is pretty straightforward. We train them, use of technology nowadays. Even our payroll stuff, it's so easy. It's literally what time, there's a code that's input in there, and then what times you work, and then it just does all of it for you. Very innovative technology that's being used by the Census Bureau in terms of staff management. And so the other website that we're using is usajobs.gov. And so those jobs from the national are going to be the National Processing Center jobs, and jobs like my own, which are like administrative jobs within the Census Bureau. I had to go to usajobs.gov. I'm sure some libraries have had seminars. I think I took one in one of the Maricopa County libraries. I went to a training on how to use USA Jobs. I know that some libraries in Maricopa County have trainings. There's like little webinars that you can take on USA Jobs. I am a career federal employee. USA Jobs still gives me a certain amount of anxiety. It just does. It's one of those websites it asks a lot, and you have to know what you're doing, and it's just one of those anxiety-inducing sites. What helped me get through that anxiety was going to my library and taking the webinars. That's literally what got me through. And then once you figure it out, it kind of just becomes like, oh, that was easy. Like that was easy. But it really does require some commitment from an institution like a library, a university. Some of our congressional offices are going to be holding training for USA Jobs on how to apply for jobs. Some of our account committees are going to do that as well. And so those are the last two sites that I have, and I wanted to end with just thank you for having us here again. We are hiring. It is great supplemental income for some folks. It is great income for folks that are looking to change career and are looking to get their foot in the door in the federal government. It's good pay in Maricopa County. I think the lowest paying person is still making above $15 an hour. In Maricopa County, the pay's pretty good. It ranges up to 20 something. Well, actually, it ranges, it can go up to over $100,000 depending on the job, right? The management and senior positions will pay well. And that is it for me. Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about like, we talked about the technology and the security and encryption, but if, I know some people, if they're filling this out at the library, they're going to be worried that somebody might look over their shoulder.
Yeah.
How long is it going to take? Or, do you guys have any guidelines in terms of having a public space that is inviting people in to fill out the online portion so that they feel comfortable and secure?
One of the things that we love about libraries is, and I forget the name of one of you probably knows this, the name of the program that you have that here's the history from one user to the next.
Oh,
Yeah, cookies.
Right, cookies, but you guys have a system in your computers. Like if I go and log into the computer, I can't see the history of the previous person that was there.
PC reservation.
Right. And so you guys have a system that kind of clears history that hasn't, above and beyond what we do, right, and above and beyond what the Bureau does. Libraries have a system that I can't go in there after you're done with it.
Right.
Once you're done and logged out, I go in there, I cannot pull up what you pulled up, which is great. It gives me personally a lot of comfort because I don't like to jump on public Wi-Fi. I don't. I will gladly jump on library Wi-Fi because I know it's secure. It's different than just if I go to a Starbucks, right? Somebody could be a Starbucks with a fake, Starbucks Wi-Fi thing. That's not the case with libraries because the pop-up will pop up and it'll be there. So in terms of guidelines, we want you guys to do that. We want you guys to help us get the word out. We want you guys to have that technology available for us. There are no guidelines in terms of privacy, like requiring that the libraries have like those voting booth style dividers. You don't need that.
Just to add, I just want to say, one of the things we found now that we're doing for the sensitive devices that the state library has passed out is there are privacy filters that you can add to laptops and tablets now. So those are really nice and cheap and just easy, and a lot of them can be removed and used later on, so you don't have to keep them on.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so we don't have a mandate that you have to have it in order to have participation. Most places it's pretty secure, but the other thing, and I will mention this, what we will be asking, right, is 9 questions. It's 9 questions. They used to say 10 minutes, 10 questions, but the reality is 9 questions. The 9th question is asking you information on people, so technically it can be 10 or technically it can be 12, depending on how many people live in your household, right? And so 9 questions, none of it has your social security information. None of it has anything that somebody can use to go open up a credit card. We're not asking you for banking information. We're not asking you for anything like that. So there's nothing in there that somebody can use to have your identity. If you have a Kohl's card, you gave Kohl's more information than you give us. If you have a Facebook account and you hear about the event on the library that, hey, the library is hosting this event and I saw it on Facebook, you already gave Facebook more information than you gave us. that you will be getting this. Yes?
I do have a question. You said we don't, or the patron that's filling it out, you don't need a code for it?
You don't.
So let's say someone walked in, accidentally put in my address and started doing the survey, how would that be covered?
Because you'll fill out your own survey too, right?
No, I mean, I'll fill it out, but let's say someone did it before you,
Right.
and now I walk in there, I'm trying to do my survey, it won't let me.
Oh, it'll let you. So you can submit as many as you want, and then what it's gonna do, so yeah, and so that's a great question, so thank you for, that's one that I've been asked a lot. And that's why I mentioned in that scenario of where you submitted one too, which is what we're hoping for, right? If you're here, you better submit one. It'll trigger on our end, because we'll have multiple entries. And so I forgot that part on one of the reasons why we do the address canvassing. So for example, if we have your address, let's say 123 Main Street, we go, is one of the addresses that we go and canvass, and we saw that there might be a structure back there, go knock on this door and check it. If we go down there and you tell us, yes, I do have an in-law suite or a little casita in the back or an RV or whatever, and I have my mother-in-law locked in back there. My mother-in-law might be back there and she might jump online and complete the form using your address, right? And so that'll trigger, and it'll be her, right? It's, whatever her name is, and so it'll be her, and then you'll get one from you, and so we'll get two. So that'll trigger a quality on our, that'll trigger a little flag on our, hey, we have multiple, right? If you identify that you have a second structure, that there's like someone living there, we will know that that's what that is, right? Because that structure doesn't necessarily have an address attached to it. So that's why we're doing address canvassing now, so that we know where the structures are, or there are other people living in the back, right? So that's one scenario in which we would get multiple responses legitimately from one address. So in that case, if we know that, we're good. It's all good. We've already input it in our system through address canvassing. If we don't, we're gonna call you, because one of the questions, I think question number 3 or question number 4, is your phone number. The only thing we will use your phone number for is to call you. We will call you before we go, so we will call you. Okay, I keep saying that because that's what we're using that for. There's no fear of like, hey, you're taking my phone number and now God knows who you're gonna give it to and who's gonna be texting me. No. The only reason we're gonna use that phone number is to call you to verify information when something like that happens. And so that's one. The other one would be like your example, right? Or even let's say that some cities and some places are having the complete count for their employees. And so they're having those like thermostats, like, hey, I completed my thing. And so they have a number of employees and they're doing this, that's right, which is good, it's great. It's great that they're doing it, right? And so for example, if the Burton Bar Library has 100 employees, right? And every employee marks when they're done with their census. And you have a thermostat, and once you hit that 100, that means everybody in the Burton Bar Library employee got counted, right? Well, let's say you're doing that at work. But let's say your spouse or your significant others or your roommate is at one of the City of Phoenix events and they have the truck there and she's like, oh, I can do this here, and she does it, right? And your grandma or somebody that's living in your house that is used to doing it on paper or whatever, or decides to call in and also complete it. So now we're going to have multiple responses from one household. Legitimate responses, right? Because maybe your wife didn't know that you were doing it at work. Maybe you didn't know that she was going to do it in wherever. And so it'll trigger a response from our end and we're going to call you. If you don't answer, we're going to send someone there. And we're going to get that answer from you. We're going to get it, okay? So, yes.
Well, I have several questions, but just tying really quick to that one. If they call, how do they know it's not a scammer? How do you identify someone who's just calling by phone to know that you're actually from the Census Bureau and not someone else?
We will identify ourselves.
As such, how they?
And you can call, you can verify. Again, the website, and I can still pull it up actually. There's a website where you can type in the name of the person calling you.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Or you can call in another number. You can say, okay, I'll call you. Call me back in 5 minutes. I'm gonna call your regional office and who you are. There's a website you can log in or jump in and just type in the address of the person that's calling you, and so that's what we'll do there.
Another question, how are snowbirds counted? Because we have a lot of
Grace
snowbird
of
areas.
God. That is one of our very, very, very complex communities, right? And we're talking with all of our complete count communities about that one because it'll depend, and unfortunately, it really does depend. So our snowbirds that live here, a majority of the time, are gonna get counted here. What that means is different, because we have folks, for example, that live in Phoenix, that live in Phoenix for 3 or 4 months where the weather isn't horrible, and then they go back out to either another state or they even go to Flagstaff or somewhere. Right? They have a home in Payson that they go and live there, or they go take their RV up north to Payson. The Payson Walmart has a huge RV population there, believe it or not. There's a Vice story about it. And so they travel there, and then they might go to Lake Havasu for a month during spring break, and so they're just traveling around. And so where they spend a majority of their time, whether we used to say 6 months and 1 day, but some of these communities don't spend anywhere 6 months. Some of their community, when a majority of the time is 4 months for them. And so where they are at a majority of the time is where we want them to fill out their census. If they don't know where they're gonna be at, and we have a lot of truck drivers, not just our snowboarders, but truck drivers that are in these situations where they're nowhere. We tell them where you are at census day, where you're at April 1st, log on, call us, and where you're at, that's where you're gonna get counted.
The other question is, so who do librarians contact for help on really tough questions? Let's say someone comes into the library, looks up their address and says, my address isn't here. And the librarian goes, oh crap. Who do they contact for the census in order to get help with addressing issues? Or who does the patron contact for that?
Great question. So there's no address verification on the form. Give us what your address is, and then when we get it, we do that. You don't do that.
Oh, okay.
It's not like they're gonna go in there, okay, my address is 123 Main Street, and it's not popping up.
Oh,
It's
I see.
not what it
Okay,
is.
it's
Just
not.
put your address in, and then we'll go. If there's an issue with that address, when we do our quality review of addresses, like for example, if you have it down as 123 Main Street, but it's really 123 West Main Street, which in Arizona, it's... My brother moved out to Tonopah, and he lives on Willetta. I know people that live on Willetta here, and I was like, dude, that is no way there's a Willetta goes all the way over there. That is, and depending on where you're at in Willetta, it'll be west, or it'll change things entirely. But it is Willetta, and so I was like, oh my God, it's insane. And so, yeah, we handle that part. We're not asking that our partners handle that part. There's nothing it's not gonna be a barrier for completion.
Okay.
It's gonna be a quality review on our end on the back end. So once the census, once we have all the submissions, we do a quality review. During the census, we do a quality review. So as this is happening, and even now in address canvassing, as this is happening, we have a second group of folks that are doing quality review that are making sure that this is getting done. Why? Because what we don't want is someone to get hired, go sit at Starbucks, just say yes, this address is verified, blah, I talked to this person, blah, 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 and then it ends up that none of it happened. Right? So we actually hire a second group of folks that will just touch base and review us, not all of it, but a certain percentage, right, that'll make it accurate. And so there's a certain percentage of review that will happen on all of our census data.
Okay, last question. Sorry, I have to ask this one, but I'm sure a patron's going to ask it. Is it illegal for them not to respond, and will they get fined for it to the decennial census?
Is it illegal not to respond? Yes.
Has it been prosecuted? Will they be prosecuted for not answering?
So it's illegal not to respond because it's mandated.
Right.
We are not a law enforcement agency, nor do we have like law enforcement powers, nor has there been a single case in history of prosecution. But also I cannot tell you that they won't, because then you'll say, hey, they'll have me on camera saying, hey, and the next thing you know, there's a court case, and Camacho said they wouldn't be prosecuted. Right. Technically, it's against the law. It is against the law. There is a fine, and there could be potential prosecution. There has never been a prosecution in history, but bar for me to be the one to say it's not going to happen, and then watch it happen, and then all over the news, that camera. But it is illegal, they have to respond. And so here's the other part in terms of the Census Bureau, and I hate the word aggressive, but it's a good describer where, enthusiastic, I guess you can say, but we have to get this information. And so some of the tactics might be seen as aggressive by some communities. For example, address canvassing. We're here in address canvassing, right? Some of the private and gated communities or RV resorts or such, they might not want to let us in. Guess what? It's not a choice. You don't have a say in whether, like, we've heard the HOA voted not, you don't care about HOA, like, your HOA does not overrule the US Constitution. Like, that's not how that works. I know how you feel about your particular HOA, and you live in this wonderful gated community, but you do not have more authority than the Constitution, right? It's a constitutional mandate. And so what we will do is we will reach out to HOAs, we will reach out to local elected officials, congressmen. If need be, we will reach out to the U.S. Marshals. We will get in there some way or another, right? Because we have to do it. The same goes for the response. So some of these folks that are not going to want a response, they're not going to answer the door during non-response follow-up. You will have enumerators that will sit outside of the door and count them as they're going in their house. And we will knock on their neighbors. How many people live next door? So we see cars, there's 2 cars there, how many people live? Do you know estimated age? Do you know their names? We will get as accurate information. And yes.
You can finish your
No,
comment.
go ahead.
About those who are experiencing homelessness and may not have an address that they can point to, when they're filling it out online or on April 1st, what do they put as their address or location? Is it the library? What would, if they don't have an address, what do they put?
Yeah, whatever they need. Whether if they're staying or they're not staying anywhere, they have a shelter. If they're not staying in the shelter, they're staying at the library. For example, the folks that are around the library, we will try to get them enumerated through group quarters, which means at one point in time, and we will reach out. So, for example, our libraries. This is when we start doing enumeration. This is one of the things that we're going to follow up with our libraries with. Right, because I mean, I've seen it at Burt Bar. I've seen it a lot when I used to live in Yuma County, and the Heritage Library there. I mean, it's a large homeless population that stays there during the day and even at night. So we will reach out to our libraries. Say, is this one of the camps? Is this where people stay? And can you tell us about how many? Because they're very familiar to you, because you see them every day, and you can tell us, yep, we have 10 folks that usually stay here, and either we can go and count. Through a point in time count, or we will do that as a group quarters count by the information that you give us.
But is it going to stop them if they try to go on the line? Because we do have
No.
on the computer. Okay.
No, because they'll put the address here and it'll pop up as a business or home, and then we will try to contact them. If we can't contact them, then we'll contact you, and then you'll be able to tell us, yes, this is the person that stays here. This is Mr. So-and-so. Yes, ma'am.
So if there's a fine, you have their information enabled to contact them and give them a fine? Does that mean that you counted them?
No, so there's no fine. So there's a fine associated with you not completing the census.
Right.
So I'm not sure I understand.
How
your
are
question.
you delivering the fine to them?
It's a great question.
Okay.
It's never been done in history.
Oh, you've never actually successfully fined a person for that?
It's there. It's expanding,
Okay.
right? I mean, I don't know how. So we're not a law enforcement. So it's not like they're gonna ask me, hey, Camacho, you know what? This person didn't go sit by the door until you see him and deliver them this ticket. I'm not a law enforcement either. We don't have law enforcement in the department, like other than the security guard that's at the. That's the extent of our law enforcement, and they're a GSA hire, they're not even a census employee hire. So there's no, but I cannot tell you that it won't happen. I mean, the US Marshals might go out there, I don't know.
Okay, I have a totally different question then.
Okay.
For your recent movers, I'm guessing the address change through the post office is the main way that you find out the new addresses if they're not self-reporting, but do you have other methods of finding recent movers? Like, do you work with real estate agents or something?
Okay, yeah, great question. So we are not tracking people. In terms of, if you move, for example, if you moved from Phoenix to Tempe. We're not tracking you. That housing unit that you left will be empty or occupied. And so we're tracking housing units. That's why that code is attached to the housing unit and not you. Right, so that code is not sent to like your person, it's to that housing unit. And so if that housing unit is vacant, then it's vacant. We have a lot of vacancies. Especially Lake Havasu has a ton of vacancies past certain like, literal vacancies. They build entire neighborhoods that are just vacant. Because they have vacation homes that they do. So. Does that answer?
Yeah.
So yeah, so if you move there, then you'll get counted there. The residency question comes in, well, what happens if I was living in Phoenix and I moved to Tempe, but no, I just moved here, do I get counted here? Yes, you get counted. You are now a Tempe resident, and you are not gonna be using Tempe resources. Right? Vice versa, right? If you move, you were in ASU in Tempe, and you were living there for a while, and you finished it, and you're being awesome, and you get a job in Phoenix, and you wanna move back to Phoenix, then you can move back here. Now you're gonna get counted here, even though you lived in Tempe before.
All right, cool, I think that's it.
That's it.
All
All
right,
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.